All right, what is up, everybody? Welcome to the Eddie Live podcast. I am here with living legend who is about to leave Taiwan after 37 years. Jerome, how are you doing, my man?
Oh, not bad, man. Not bad. Sad in a way,
Yep.
but time rolls on. Sometimes you just have to move, and I feel I'm, in a way, a sojourner on Earth. I describe myself. I almost don't really have one permanent home.
Okay, beautiful, man. Yes, I mean, it's funny. I haven't been here for 37 years, but I've been here for a while, and we haven't crossed paths. So I wanted to make sure that we did before you left. So I appreciate you coming out.
Okay, well, I'm happy to be here. Happy you could have me, and this may be my final words on Taiwan.
Okay. So, well, let's start like at the beginning, maybe, yeah. Before we get deep, maybe you can tell me what originally brought you here to Taiwan.
Okay,
37 years.
Came here on a 2-year contract with Bechtel Engineering back in 1988. I had been working with Dallas Transit System, which became Dallas Area's Rapid Transit. We had a merger, and our side, Dallas Transit System, was coming on at the short end of the merger. If you've ever been in a merger, there is a certain part of them that is like a bloodbath.
I can imagine, yeah. Yes.
And I could see our people were getting cut, and as DART, D-A-R-T, in Dallas took over, and they had the money. We didn't have the money, even though we were the bigger and more established organization. But anyway, so I was offered this job. Another interesting story on how that all came about. But basically, I was offered the job, and I was getting an offer much more than I was making in Dallas.
Okay.
So I decided, why not go for it?
Yeah, jump ship from Dallas, Texas, right, to Taipei directly, yeah?
Right. That was a...
And how was do you remember your first year here? Were there any, like, the culture shocky stuff or any stuff like that? Very different. I mean, this was a long time ago, Taipei, right?
Tremendous. Always different things going on. There's always, culture shock. Now, I had been actually trained in culture shock, and part of my past, I had training as a missionary.
Oh.
And it's interesting how your life sometimes gets manhandled by bureaucrats. I was one time going to be a missionary in Dhaka, then East Pakistan, now Bangladesh.
Okay.
And some bureaucrat refused my visa. He just felt there were too many Christians in the country and said, cut.
Okay. Wow. Interesting.
In that time, you wouldn't know it. You're a little too young. But at that time in the 60s, I would presume you're Mexican. You have a Catholic tradition.
For sure. Definitely. Yeah.
Okay. There was a lot of change going on with Vatican II and the church. So that was one major paradigm shift. So the book we're going to be talking about.
Yes, this is it right here. Yeah.
That was one major paradigm shift. In that time, in the 60s in the U.S., there were a lot of paradigm shifts going on. The civil rights movement, another major, shift. I was in Washington when Kennedy was assassinated.
Wow. Okay.
But anyway, some bureaucrat in then East Pakistan, now Bangladesh, changed my life by just saying, "Nah, we've had enough of these guys."
Wow.
And
some kind of divine intervention there, yeah.
That's going way back, but that leads to why I eventually, since you're in the Catholic tradition, part of my tradition, I was being trained as a missionary priest, and therefore trained in cultural adaptation.
Okay.
But still, you have, no matter what you're training, you still have a lot of culture shock, culture adaptation.
Okay.
So back to your question was on more coming over here, and yeah, even for Taiwanese, that Taiwan in the 1980s is totally different from Taiwan right now.
I would imagine. If someone were to ask you, what's the biggest change, sort of from the 80s to now, in your opinion?
The biggest change, I would probably say, is how Taiwan's democracy evolved.
Okay.
I'd like to say, and the MRT did make a big difference. So I was I was manager of technology transfer on Taipei MRT and Kaohsiung MRT. So my hat's off to friends down in Kaohsiung. We haven't forgotten you.
Okay.
But
I rode that one once. The Taipei one is definitely amazing. Yeah.
yeah, and that is a major change. Another change that I always remember on my coming here is how the economy changed, because when I came in '88, at that time, the Olympics had been in Seoul, Korea.
Gotcha.
And I met a guy in the airport. We were transferring planes. And I said, give me, what's your impression of Taipei? And he said, motor scooters.
Okay.
We still have motor scooters,
Still, yeah.
but at that time they didn't have that many cars. And so the economy, that people were getting a better economy, they were able to upgrade from a scooter to a car.
Gotcha.
And all that.
Okay, beautiful. And so 37 years later, now going back to live in the States, right?
Yeah.
So do you, like, when I go back to Canada, I always find almost like a reverse culture shock. So do you anticipate maybe a little bit of that before we dive deep into what we're going to talk about?
Okay, well, I think this will be particularly problematic or hectic because of Trump.
Oh, shoot, yeah, okay.
And, I don't want to get into too much politics, but
Sure.
And I don't know if I can even swear on your program.
No problem. Yeah, sure.
But well, I probably better not commit myself, but Trump, I'll just put some things out there that Trump couldn't run a university, he couldn't run a casino, he has so many businesses that fail, and yet he says he's a genius. You figure it out. I'll just say, you figure it out.
Okay.
That's one thing. Trump said he was going to, you're from Mexico.
Sure,
He was going to, did you ever see that wall he was going to build and you were going to pay for?
I heard about it. Yeah. But,
I'll just say it, it's bullshit.
Yeah.
That's standard fare. But in a way, and this is where you get to the paradigm, who does the bullshit talk to?
Okay.
Who gobbles up the bullshit? Whose paradigm is satisfied when they hear the bullshit? And that's what gets you into paradigm thought.
Okay.
And and this will be a little bit into then how I watch Taiwan's democracy develop. And I'm going to put an interesting question to you. I'm going to be a little Socratic here.
Go for it.
But you're in a group, because the follow-up book to this is on the dialectic between the community and the individual. The individual has to be himself. The community says you have to conform. And there's an ongoing, never-ending dialectic throughout history of man.
Okay.
So, have your origin, Mexico, Canada, etc.
Mm-hmm.
And you may have been involved in politics or not, but would you, I'm just going to put this as a general question, would you take one for the team? What would it take for you to take one for the team and not take one for the team?
Like how so? Take what for the team? Do you mean?
Okay, so
Like,
you have,
yeah,
well,
yeah.
for the team, then you have to figure what is the
What's my team?
what's your
Yeah,
team
okay,
and what do
okay.
they support, what paradigm? Because part of the history of Taiwan is actually people not taking one for the team, but
Okay.
that contributes to the democracy, interestingly enough. And this is, let me weave this back, that Chen Shui-bian became mayor of Taipei, okay?
Yeah, I
Now,
remember that. Yeah.
in Taiwan, you have two groups, which for simplicity's sake, we will just say they use the word Wai Shenren, Ben Shenren.
Okay.
I do and I do not like it. I like the term in that it designates, but I don't like it in the sense that it implies a province.
Okay.
So, but, anyway, the Wai Shenren and the Ben Shenren. And Taiwan's democracy is in some ways riddled by the Wai Shenren, someone in the Wai Shenren not taking one for the team.
Okay. Okay.
Chen Shui-bian is running for mayor of Taipei. He becomes the first DPP mayor of Taipei.
I remember that. Mm-hmm.
Why does he become mayor? Because the KMT split their vote.
Yeah. Okay.
Chen Shui-bian, later the KMT unites under Ma Ying-jeou, becomes mayor of Taipei.
I remember that too.
Later, Chen Shui-bian again now runs for president. And the choice is, will Lian Chan take one for the team? James Sung is a much more popular candidate. Lian Chan feels it's my turn. I've been VP under Lee Deng-hui. I should be the candidate.
Okay.
Who should take one for the team? Well,
Yeah.
since Sung came with 35% of the vote, I think it was 35, 36, Lian Chan came with 23% of the KMT vote.
Okay.
Obviously, Lian Chan should have taken one for the team.
Of course.
In hindsight.
Makes sense. Yeah.
Chen Shui-bian wins with 39%.
Okay.
So just by 3%.
Yeah.
During that time also, I would suspect some of Lian Chan's friends spring the Chongqing scandal, which damages James Sung perhaps enough to damage him at least 3 percentage points.
Okay. Yes. Yes.
After the election, the case is dropped. It was just there for damaging James Sung's reputation.
Okay.
And I always wondered, to me, if I were in James Sung's shoes, you're thinking like, I could have had president if he would have taken one for the team.
Yes. Okay.
Lian Chan is probably saying, you upstart, okay, you were the most popular governor, but I was the VP. It was my turn. That was the normal order of the KMT. I leave it up to the audience.
Okay.
Who should have taken one for the team?
Yes, I understand. I actually remember I had just arrived, and I remember Chen Shui-bian was campaigning, right? And the shot, right? When someone took the assassination attempt thing.
No,
you remember
that's
that?
the second.
That was the second one?
That's the second one.
Oh, okay, okay.
Now,
So there was
we'll
the
get
previous
into
one.
that because
I was here for that one, so I remember that one. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because that is the next one, and I'm going to leave an unsolved question here that some writer can probably solve. But so anyway, Chen Shui-bian wins with 39% in 2000.
Okay.
First DPP president of Taiwan. In my mind, what I would call the Stockholm syndrome is wearing off. The KMT had ruled Taiwan under martial law since it came here, and really since somewhere like 47, 49, and technically. And it was lifted in 87 by Chiang Ching-kuo because he begins to see the U.S. has put its embassy in Beijing. We got to change course here. Now, and the intertwining of this, James Soong is the one, when Chiang Ching-kuo said, I want Lee Teng-hui, a Taiwanese-born person to succeed me. He was VP at the time. I want him to succeed me. And the KMT again is split. We don't want this Taiwanese guy. And James Soong stands up for him. So they, and says, this is what Chiang Ching-kuo wanted, we got to do it. They put Lee Teng-hui in. He becomes president from, 87, 88 to 2000. Long reigning. Very important presidency because I've met with 4 presidents, and Lee is very important. Okay, so that's part of the story here. But again, okay, so we're at 2000. Chen Shui-bian has won 39%. Lien Chan and James Soong together have 36 and 23 or so, almost 60% of the vote.
So they should have, if they put together, they should have won that.
Right.
But they wouldn't take one for the team, right?
Well, no, in that time, they joined forces. And in this time, James Soong takes one for the team and says, okay, I will be VP.
Okay.
Now, I would love to know, and only James Soong and Lien Chan could tell me, but my feeling is, and this is just my feeling, that Lien Chan said to James Soong, look, together we could win. We got 60% to, Chen's 40%. If we join, I'll be president for 4 years. You'll be my VP. Then you can have 8 years after me. Okay. I don't know if that secret deal was made, but some deal was made that made James Soong take one for the team in 2004 and not 2000.
Okay, yeah, understandable. Okay. And you were mentioning that...
Now, that's when the assassination was. But, and I'm going to weave back to the other change that has been going on is that, okay, Chen Shui-bian had 39% in 2000, but the Stockholm Syndrome is wearing off. We have the strawberry generation is coming to vote. New people coming up, they don't think in the old terms. So Chen Shui-bian wins in 2004 by a hairbreadth. There is also the assassination attempt, which many, Henry Lee I think it was a real attempt.
Okay.
Not to necessarily kill. My personal belief is that it was more organized by those gamblers who had a lot at stake in betting on the election. Okay. That's just my personal belief. You can question me, and I'm not going to argue with you.
So the sympathy vote, right? Yeah, they're like, oh, this guy got shot at. They were kind of banking on that, I guess, right? I remember those days. I was a younger man at that time, so I had just got here, been here for maybe 1 year, 2 years. So yeah, I remember. I think 2004 you said. So yeah, right. I think it was 2 years in Taiwan at the time. Yeah. So it was good time, man. You mentioned that you have met 4 presidents.
Right.
So tell me about that. How does one? I've not met any. So how does one meet the president?
Well, Lee Teng-hui, I had a good friend. He's dead now, but he had friends and connections with Lee Teng-hui, and this was after Lee Teng-hui retired. And I asked him if he could arrange an interview, and I went out and interviewed Lee Teng-hui. It was around 2004, 2005, at his home where he was living in retirement, and talked to him about the past with some interesting questions and that. So that's the first one. Chen Shui-bian, I've had a lot of meetings with. I met him when he was mayor of Taipei. I was doing writing on art, and he was doing promoting art in the city. I met him through DPP groups, and I was, writing my books on Taiwan's struggle for democracy. I met him when he was president. I also visited him when he was in jail after when he was in presidency. Ma Ying-jeou, I met a couple times at interviews. I was in what was then, we had a group called International Communicators Network, which later morphed into a Taiwan Correspondence Club. That's another history thing for someone else to go. Elaine Salthead, I gave her some of my files. That's an interesting group of writers and journalists, etc. But I also, actually, I gave Ma Ying-jeou a copy of this book. Okay. I don't think he read it. Okay. We were at a table. One of my universities, I went to Notre Dame University.
Nice.
And I'm a graduate of there. And Douglas Hsu, who's head of Far Eastern Enterprises, is also a Notre Dame grad. And so we've known each other. And it was back around, I'm trying to think, in 2016, 17, somewhere. I'd have to check the dates. But we were having a Notre Dame dinner, alumni dinner at Far Eastern Shangri-La Hotel. Douglas Hsu, of course, was doing business in China and all that. Ma Ying-jeou was retired at the time. But we were all at the head table. There were about 15 of us, and there were smaller tables. But so we were all at the head table there. And of course, afterwards, everyone had their picture taken with Ma.
Sure, of course.
But at the table, I had brought one of these books, and I gave it to Ma. I'd always be curious if he read it or if he just said, "What the hell is this?" Throw it away.
That'd be cool. That'd be cool to find that one out. Yeah.
One of those untold stories.
Yeah.
So, Tsai Ing-wen, I met many times. You saw the pictures on the Breakfast Club.
Yes. I actually, let me pull one up right here. Bam, there's one here. One of these pictures with you and Tsai Ing-wen, right?
Okay, right.
DPP 25th anniversary, yeah.
And that was in 2011 when Tsai was running for president against Ma Ying-jeou. She lost.
Okay.
She would come back and win in 2016 and 2020.
Yep. And here's the other picture. That's the one we're looking for, I think, right?
Well, that's both at the same time. Those are the same Breakfast Club meeting.
Gotcha. Okay. Very cool.
Or wait, let's see. I think
it says morning tea with Tsai Ing-wen. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Okay. That was the. And we had about 85 people with a maxed out crowd at the Breakfast Club, and it was at some place called Little Piggy Cafe. I don't know if it still exists.
Okay.
Over, I think, on off Shenzhen South Road or Shenzhen Road.
Okay. Well, maybe for the people that don't know, maybe you can tell me a little bit about the Breakfast Club, a little bit about that. Yeah.
Okay. Well, the Breakfast Club instituted, I organized that around 2010 or something, and a group of us were having breakfast at a place down by, oh God, what was it? There was a famous restaurant in Tianmu which opened a downtown branch at Heping and Dunhua.
Okay.
But it later closed. But we were having breakfast there, and I used to like their breakfast. They had waffles and sweet stuff and coffee, and we were all chatting, and I realized I've got a lot of interesting friends.
Yeah.
This guy wrote a book. This guy did this. This guy did this. I should organize a club where we meet for breakfast, and I will be responsible to source the speaker.
Okay.
And it will be a non-profit thing in the sense that all you got to do is buy your own breakfast.
Buy yourself a breakfast and you can get, very cool.
And then, so we've had meetings at the Li Fa Yuan, the Bi Kim Shao was one of our speakers there. She later became vice president. But, a lot of different people, and I just found it would be good if these people interconnected. I'm a believer in serendipity.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Yes.
that serendipity, you get to know people, that leads to one thing and all that. Just like I got to interview Lee Dong-Wei because of my friendship with this one guy who knew Lee Dong-Wei. And I said, could you arrange this? And he said, sure,
Wow. Yeah, that's beautiful, man. That's actually one of the reasons I started this podcast. I've been here for about 20 years. And, with the restaurant, I've been here like 22 years. And the restaurant's maybe 16 years. And that's a long time to meet, lots of people. So, yeah, with this, I've also tried to connect people. Like I've had, for example, I interviewed a professional fighter once, and he was talking about, the struggles of, paying for a fight camp and stuff like that. And then the next day he called me and he's like, you know what, somebody watched it and they sponsored my fight camp and just cool things have happened.
Serendipity.
It's really cool. So I agree 100%. Yeah.
But with serendipity, you don't know what happens. You just put things together and usually, hopefully, good things happen.
Yeah, it's been good. Sometimes I've interviewed sort of like a wide range of people, and it's been pretty cool because you connect people and people go on to do different things, and a lot of it was, for example, another time I had interviewed a guy around my age who's just like super fit, and I interviewed him. He told me he's on the carnivore diet, right? The only meat diet, and we talked about that. I said that's a really cool topic. Bring that and let's talk about it. And I had a customer that comes. And, he was having some health problems and stuff like that. And he watched the podcast and he was really interested in it. So I connected these two guys and the carnivore diet guy kind of coached the other guy. And then the other guy kind of changed up his diet, cleaned it up, and he lost a whole bunch of weight. He's off all his medication. And it's just like, it's incredible how just these little things where I met this guy thinking, yeah, that'd be a cool interview, but he actually, he changes the life of somebody else, which is really cool. Yeah, I love that. So I agree 100%.
Right. No, so I tell everyone, look up the word serendipity. Bring two things together. You don't know what the hell is going to happen. It's usually good.
That's beautiful. I love that. I I don't want to cut you off, but I wanted to put that in there because I definitely agree. I definitely agree.
Because it backs that up. It backs the reason why, I formed the Breakfast Club, why I do a lot of things. I organized, I didn't organize, but I was a founding president of what was then Addison Community Theater, later became a major theater house in North Dallas area. And there were a lot of other people, of course, involved, not just me. But, I'm usually involved in this. ICN became the Taiwan Correspondence Club. And that was one where I was president. We had many presidents, and usually I was vice president, would go that the vice president would then the next year take over for the president. So I took over for a year. My VP didn't want to take over. I said, okay, I'll do another year. Again, my VP didn't want to. And I said, oh, sometimes you got to say it's not going to work.
You got to call it. Okay. And so just finishing off on the Breakfast Club, now it's still going, right? The Breakfast Club? Yes?
Right.
So if somebody were watching and wanted to say, hey, I would love to check out the Breakfast Club, what could they do to find the Breakfast Club?
Okay, Linda Arrigo has taken over the Breakfast Club. After my wife died and that I kind of, found I was just being kind of in a moment, in a year of, grief and loss and that.
Oh, sure.
I just, wasn't in a organizing move.
Understand.
And Linda Arrigo offered to take over the Breakfast Club. And Linda Arrigo, who I gave you a paper on, and has her own very interesting history in Taiwan. Wife of Shiming De, been kicked out of the country, came back. Linda is still here. Linda is running it. Not maybe as frequently, but we're all getting old. It probably, Linda may even be looking for someone to pass the torch to. I don't know.
That's very cool. Yeah, I would love to if you can make that intro. I definitely would love to check it out.
Okay, right. No, I will definitely look to get Linda, and I think she would be a good speaker for your program.
I would love that. Yeah.
She's got a tremendous history with Taiwan, married to Shiming De, as I say, kicked out of the country, advocate of democracy, so many things.
That's amazing. Yeah, no, please. Yeah, if you can make that intro, I'd love that. Yeah. So obviously, 37 years you've been here, right? So
Yeah.
what, you were saying that you originally came for, like most of us, I'll come for 1 year, maybe 2 years, but then eventually you stayed for 37 years. So
Yeah.
so what kind of kept you? What was like the day-to-day stuff that you were doing?
Okay, and besides the changes of of course, probably one big factor was I met my second wife, Monica Huang Rui Jen, here, and interestingly enough, through a different set of connections with one of my brothers who worked for AFIS, Army Air Force Exchange Service. He had met her in Germany. There's a whole story about our Yen Fen, our fated meeting.
Okay.
But I met her the first week I was here, and again, kind of like a chance set of circumstances. My luggage had gotten tied up in customs. Since I was manager level on the MRT level, about 2 days after I got here, we had an important meeting with all the bigwigs from the U.S. And as manager level, I had to give a report on my division and technology transfer, et cetera. And I needed to go out and buy a jacket. And I'll skip the story, but she helped me in that, and that's how we met.
Nice.
And, then we started dating, and, one thing led to another.
Yeah, I know that happened. That happened to me too. Yeah, for sure. We all plan on coming, and I planned on also coming between 1 and 2 years, maybe learning some of the language. Coming out. I actually I went to university in Vancouver Island, and I wanted to be a police officer. I went did my exams for RCMP and stuff like that, and got all the way, past I was 21 or something. I passed the physical super easily, passed everything, got all the way to the end. And
So you were going to be a Mountie.
I was going to be a Mountie, yes.
Okay.
Yes. And actually, no, but when I tell the story, most people have no idea what Mountie is. So that's pretty amazing. But yeah, I was going to do that. And the very, very final interview, I failed because they said I didn't have life experience and I was too young, right? So
Okay.
I said, okay, so, what should I do? They said, well, you can reapply, but you cannot reapply for 2 years. So my plan was I finished up my job. I was coaching soccer there. And I thought, well, I think I got to get out of here. My family said, go back to Mexico. Your sister went down there. She loved it. I do speak Spanish, pretty fluently, but she's like, if you go there for a year, you're going to have like super native level, right?
Right.
And I thought, well, I want to do something different. I was young, and I was kind of like a little bit angry that I failed,
Yeah,
and
I know that.
I was
had
angry.
to say,
Yeah.
you're too young.
Yeah, I was a little angry.
Too young to be a Mountie.
Yeah, it was a little. Yeah,
I'm ready.
It was great. Yeah, it was great actually. And I thought, I had a friend that had gone to Taiwan for a year, and I said, oh, you know what? Tell me about that. So I said, okay, let's go. So I came down. I took a job in Taipei, and I planned on 1 or 2 years. And then every time a year came up, I'm like, this is great. Why would I leave here? It's kind of like almost like living on vacation. Like this place is great. Weather's nice. We were talking about weather earlier. I come from almost Alaska, very close to Alaska. So going to a tropical island after being in almost Alaska, it was great. No more snow days and stuff like that. And I love the fact that tropical weather, can learn Mandarin. There's beautiful women everywhere. I just thought, I think I'm going to stay a little longer. And then that was December 2002. So it's been a while. Yeah. Not quite 37 years, but
Right.
it's been a while. It's been a while. So yeah, I loved it. Yeah. So similar story. Yeah.
Well, maybe 10 years, someone will be interviewing you and say,
Yeah.
tell me about your early days.
Yeah, 2002, back in the day, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Beautiful. So the career, right? So tell me a little bit more about the, you've done the books, right? You have a few books. I'm not sure how many. You have 5 on Taiwan.
5 books on Taiwan,
Okay, so tell
right?
me, yeah.
3 on language learning. The Paradigm book is the 4th and, or more philosophical.
That's great.
But this is kind of like in a way, my statement of life and realization of all, as I see the world, and I've seen so many different paradigms existing. So I'm going to kind of weave in and out here. Like, it's interesting how people have a paradigm that drives them, and it usually will impact their life, but sometimes impacts the lives of others. This may seem a little diverse, but you remember recently there was the assassination of the Japanese minister Abe here in Taiwan.
Sure. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Now, the guy that did it had nothing political in the sense of he wasn't for this political party or that political party. But Abe, for at one particular time, either had endorsed or praised some religious leader, and this guy's mother had lost her life savings to this guy's religious cause, and therefore he felt this deep, anger and loss, and took it out with an assassination.
Yeah, yeah.
It's sometimes small things like this start just like World War I was started by an assassination. Things are there as a tinderbox, but some strange spark and circumstance creates the whole thing going. That it's interesting what paradigm drives this person. So, and let me kind of weave back here. I look at Ukraine. Okay, why the fuck am I talking about Ukraine?
No problem. Yeah, good. That's good for you. Yeah.
But I look at what does Putin really, what paradigm drives Putin that he feels he's running a big country, biggest country
Massive,
in the world.
Yeah.
And I think Canada is only second in size to Russia in landmass.
Yeah, sure.
And he's running this country that, and why does he feel, he's got to control Ukraine or downgrade Ukraine or keep the separatists from going there? Really, it's not going to cause that much of a chain effect as far as I can see.
Yeah.
And so many people are dying because of that.
Yeah.
Now, maybe he thought he'd have a quick win. It didn't work out that way.
I'm pretty sure that's what he thought. Yeah. But, I mean, that's a tough one. I mean, talking about the assassination attempts and stuff like that, because you're quite a knowledgeable guy, I got to ask you your opinion of the Trump one, right? Which was like last year, I believe. That whole,
Well, I would probably believe that the
if I can, I don't want to put you on the spot.
No, I probably, just from what I have read, the guy that wanted to kill Trump had his own thing of why Trump was. It wasn't that political.
Okay.
I'm sure there's a
similar situation, right? That's why I kind of wanted to bring that up. Yeah.
There's a hell of a lot of other people who would rather put a bullet in Trump.
Oh, for sure.
For political reasons. But an interesting question I would pose here, and this is a rhetorical question, but maybe I'll put it to you and put you on the spot.
Go for it. I'll try.
Let's say you are Secret Service.
Okay.
Your job is to protect Trump. Would you take a bullet for him?
Oh, man. Okay, that's a tough one. I think if that's the job, right? I mean, that's kind of what you signed up for, then that's you know, I would imagine that, you know, I was saying I wanted to do, you know, the policing, right? The RCMP. I would imagine that you can't just sign up for Secret Service. This is my thinking anyways. So I would imagine they worked their way up to this level, this position. So,
Right.
I mean,
You have to do it.
you have to, I
Yeah.
would think, right? That's what I think.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
No,
yeah.
and I think it's a good
Yeah.
answer.
Yeah.
And now part of my answer is that I don't think Trump would ever take a bullet for anyone.
Oh, probably not. Probably not.
Not even his
Yeah.
children or his wife.
Okay. Okay. Well, okay. All right.
That's just my impression of Trump.
Okay.
I go along with the idea that he's an extreme narcissist.
Understandable. Yeah. Wow. Okay. Okay. No, I just
Okay.
wanted to get your thought on that because we were talking about, you know, the assassination attempts not being political, but, you know, kind of sparking off, like you said, World War I and
Affecting
stuff like
everything,
that.
yeah.
How a little somebody could just kind of, you know, snap and spark off a world war, which is kind of crazy. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, obviously, you know, like in World War I, there was a tinderbox, and there were a lot of tensions and everything. So, one spark, it may be just a spark, but in the right place at the right time.
Yeah, no, for sure. For sure. So we're talking a little bit about like the changes and stuff. You have something on there you want to mention that we haven't hit yet?
Okay, yeah, let me look
Okay.
at because I, you know, we went through this whole idea of taking one for the team, and
Yes.
and that's interesting how that has played through Taiwan's history. Now, the other, I think I would ask the question, because this I keep coming back to the paradigms, of
Yeah.
course.
Okay.
But you know, the Lee Dong-wei. Well, I'm going to pose a different question here, but it's related. I go to a place, kind of over on Lolita called Craft House, and often
I know
there,
it. I
you
know Craft House. Yeah, good stuff.
Yeah.
Good pizza, craft beer,
and
good
you know,
stuff.
there's a guy that I met there. He's KMT, military, retired, and all that. And it was very interesting. We were having a conversation to me, and I asked him just a normal question: Are you Wai Shen Ren or Ben Shen Ren? Okay.
Okay.
And usually most Wai Shen Ren will say, I'm Wai Shen Ren. You know, they're very proud of that paradigm. Okay, what
Okay.
is the paradigm that drives the Wai Shen Ren? Because the paradigm that drives the Wai Shen Ren is totally different than the paradigm that drives Taiwanese. that
Okay.
Ben, you know, we call
Yeah.
Ben Shen Ren. And he made an interesting statement to me, and I'm going to put it to you.
Okay.
He said, Taiwan has too much Japanese influence. Now, I'm thinking, what the fuck?
Okay.
You know, and let me ask you, you've
Okay.
only been in Taiwan since 2000. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah,
do
yeah.
you feel Taiwan has too much Japanese influence?
I've been to Japan. It's quite nice. I don't think it has. I don't notice it having any, to be honest. But I'm quite a, you know, maybe not the best person to ask, but I don't notice any, to be honest. Yeah.
Okay, no, but
Yeah.
well, what he's
About as opposite of
Yeah.
as it can get, I think. Yeah.
Well, what he's speaking, as I interpreted it, is that, you know, I'm Wai Shen Ren, and I have bought into the Chinese Empire paradigm.
Oh, yeah.
Now, an interesting thing, and I'm going to come up with another interesting question for you on Jinmen and Matsu and the KMT for you. But on this, back on the Wai Shen Ren paradigm, that, you know, they lost the Civil War. They don't want to admit it.
Sure.
Somehow they feel if we still hold to the empire, Chinese empire paradigm, we never lost the Civil War. It's kind of like Russians who were, you know, lost back in the 1920s and were driven into exile and all that, but a little different. But, you know, still want to restore the emperor.
Okay. Yeah.
Well, they don't want to restore the emperor, but they want the KMT to be the new emperor in China. And they will they will work with the CCP because they both believe there is one China. Now, to me, one China ended with the Ming. The Manchus conquered China, they conquered Tibet, they conquered Xinjiang, they conquered Mongolia, and united all that. Now, as Westerners, we sometimes go too much into simplicity, and I don't know why we fell into calling that China. It's a Manchu empire. It was never China as people see China now. Maybe you can talk empire. It's easier. I look at Western history, and we have a period when the Assyrians and the Syrians, the Babylonians and all that were fighting back and forth. But we never say they were all the Babylon Empire or they were all one empire. They were all different groups struggling in a power struggle throughout the Middle East. But in the Chinese paradigm mentality, somehow the Qing was China.
Okay.
Even though they always, at that period, they resented wearing the Manchu queue. They had to do their hair the certain way.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, I've seen
and
that.
it was always restore the Ming, overthrow the Qing, restore the Ming. The Qing was a Manchu empire. It was not China. Westerners, we go for too much simplicity. We just buy in, we'll call the whole thing. I blame it even on Marco Polo, who the Yuan dynasty was a Mongol empire that went from Russia to Eastern Europe. And, but we just say, well, the eastern part here, the one section, the Yuan dynasty, that was China. No, it wasn't China. It was part of a Mongol empire. Get your terms right. Don't bury us with this history that is misinterpreted. Anyway, obviously most of the people were Chinese in there.
Yeah.
There were more Chinese than Tibetans or Mongolians or Xinjiang and all that, and more Manchus, but it was a Manchu empire. Now, I'm going to pose a question here, interesting question for some historians out there. Now, the
Make
Treaty
a
of...
new one. Sorry, go ahead. Just tell her to make
the Treaty of Shimonoseki.
Oh, man, I do not. I'm sorry about that.
1895.
Yeah. Okay.
The Manchus are fighting Japan. Japan is a rising empire. They're fighting in Korea over influence over Korea. Korea is another very interesting country that I in some ways admire, and I guess I don't have enough lifetime to examine the curiosity of it.
Okay.
But the Manchus are fighting Japan over Korea. They lose.
Okay.
They give Taiwan to Japan. Now, at that time, the Manchus do not control all of Taiwan. And this is where we get into the yellow tiger flag.
Okay.
We're too long to go into this today. But 1895, the Manchus only control the western half of Taiwan. Now, the Manchus are not China, though some people call them China. China died with the Ming. Koxinga came here, died in his first year of syphilis, and the Manchus pursued them and brought them all back. Shillong, an interesting character, saw that there was reason he could make a profit off of Taiwan. This gets into the mapping of Taiwan.
Gotcha.
And he said, let's keep the island. But at the time, part of the island was ruled by the indigenous groups who never united, which was their problem. Again, same story in America with the American Indians and all that.
Yeah.
And the Manchus. Japan is the first country to rule the whole island. And that leads to the complex story of why the yellow tiger flag, where the four major groups in Taiwan, the two different groups from Fujian province, the Hakka and the indigenous, all unite for a brief time, resisting Japan's colonization from 1895 till about November 95. They lose. Japan then, Taiwan is Japan's colony for 50 years. So all this is weaving back and forth, now, okay, I hope people are still with me.
Okay.
Jinmen and Matsu are not part of the Treaty of Shimonoseki. Penghu, the pescadores, are. Okay. Now, so that's 1895. 50 years, Japan's colony is Taiwan, which is both Taiwan and Penghu. Japan is seeing it as to expand further south, etc. And that's why streets in Kaohsiung are much wider, by the way.
They're very wide. Yeah, I noticed that when I went down. I was like, you bringing like boats on these things? What's going on? Yeah.
Japan saw it as a major port city to expand southward. They really did a good job there. Taipei was already too built up to do that. Okay, so we're back. Okay, the Manchus have the KMT has their uprising against the Manchus, 1910, 1911, tries to establish the ROC, okay? Now, you're still with me. So the ROC,
sure, yeah.
The ROC will then get into its battle with the communists and the KMT, etc. And you get into the whole story of, again, which the KMT never wants to face. Why did they lose the Civil War? They had the best advantage, but they were, in short, perhaps corrupt. And they never want to face that reality. Anyway, and that is why they lost, but that is why they still hold to the restore the empire.
Okay.
But Jinmen and Matsu, are not part of the Treaty of Shimonoseki, and therefore, when Japan gives Taiwan back to no one, 1951-52, Japan in the Treaty of San Francisco surrenders sovereignty over Taiwan. The war ended 1945, 7 years later, so
Okay.
no one can say, oh, it's too quick. There's a group out there called the Taiwan Civil Government that feels this still belongs to the U.S. because of that.
Okay.
I'll leave that aside.
Gotcha.
Because a lot of people say that's too much trouble being stirred up. But Jinmen and Matsu, therefore, were never part of colonial Japan. Now, back to my original question, do you think Taiwan has too much Japanese influence?
Okay, yeah.
Jinmen and Matsu are always part of the Manchu Empire, later the KMT and the Chinese Civil War, etc. Now, World War II ends, 45-49, the KMT loses to the CCP. Again, they have the best advantage, but why? They never faced that. Why were they so corrupt that they really didn't believe in democracy? It was me first and democracy second.
Okay, gotcha, understand.
So they come here, but they also occupy Jinmen and Matsu. The CCP claims China puts their constitution in 1949. The ROC constitution is 1947. Treaty of San Francisco, Japan surrenders Taiwan, 1952, does not name a successor. Don't give me the Cairo Convention, etc. That can be debunked. It was just a press release. So, technically, Jinmen and Matsu are still under KMT, Taiwan, whose hands? They are not part of. They are part of China in the sense that they were never part of the Treaty of Shimonoseki, and therefore, when the Civil War ended, technically it didn't end because the CCP never occupied those two islands.
Okay.
In 1949, the Battle of Gunmingtou, they tried to attack it. An interesting story of why they got beat there. They, and that is, and I pose that out there for historians as to take that Gordian's knot and say, okay, who do Jinmen and Matsu belong to? Or does, did the Chinese Civil War end with the democracy of Taiwan when the KMT lost the presidency and the Taiwanese people, call them the Benshengren, start to rule? A lot of complexity out there.
Wow. Okay. That's yeah. I do enjoy
you're
history,
Mexican
but
and Canadian, so
yeah.
Don't worry about it.
Yeah. No, yeah. That's I have no idea how to respond to that. So, yes. Awesome, man. I got some other pictures. You want me to pull up some pictures here?
Yeah, let's go.
Let me pull up a picture here. Bam.
Yeah.
Let's go through that. Boom. You've got, looks like a Taiwan-U.S. China triangle. You're on some kind of committee. So I pulled these off of your Facebook page.
Let's see, but it's hard for my eyes to
Okay,
catch
that's okay.
that.
I can skip I can go to the next one. Bam. It's like you got some kind of a book signing going on there.
Okay, I did a book signing with the Taiwan Civil Government Group.
Okay,
That
okay.
almost looks like I'm giving Liang, or maybe it's not, but I did book signings different places.
Beautiful. Okay. Hold on. This
That's
is a
my
great
wife.
picture. Yeah, I thought so.
Monica, yeah.
Okay, 2014.
Really, my second spring, definitely my energizer, source of life in Taiwan. It's at a really good yen fen. And I'd like to talk with someone about, because we just had the right yin-yang balance.
Gotcha.
That somehow you're lucky. I
Very
think you said
important,
you
yes.
found it with your wife. And if you can find the right yin-yang balance with a woman, you're a really lucky man. I'm a lucky man.
Beautiful. I agree 100%, man.
Yeah.
This looks like a book. This is this book, right? Is it? I believe so. You got a book signing going on here.
Okay.
Possibly,
No, that one is. That's a
opposite.
grad student. One of the Taiwan grad students, but I'm signing a book for her and that. But we're just having coffee up in Tianmu. I think I'm just giving her a.
Tianmu, shout out. Yeah, we love Tianmu. Got one more picture here for you.
Okay.
It looks like you were on the Talking Taiwan podcast. Yeah? With
I was.
Felicia Lin, I think her name is. Yeah?
Okay. Talking Taiwan. Let me
Do you
boy.
remember that one? Yeah, that's okay. No, so what happened was I went through your Facebook and I found some pretty cool images and I thought, oh yeah, I bet you've been interviewed so many times. It's probably a blur. I know that feeling.
Oh Talking Taiwan.
Yeah.
That's Felicia.
Felicia.
Felicia does tremendous.
Yeah.
Interviewed a whole lot of people on Taiwan. And Talking Taiwan is, again, give you a wide range of history of Taiwan, all the different people she's interviewed. So.
Beautiful. Yeah.
And actually, though, I will take credit. She said that mine was the most popular one, at least in my year.
All right, there you go.
I gotta dust my own collar here.
For sure. Beautiful, man. We're pretty. I know you don't want to do too long, but is there anything that we missed that you want to make sure that you hit before we call it?
Let me look at the. Some things here. I still laugh at the thing that Taiwan has too much Japanese influence. But if you look at what people say and what the paradigm that they reveal, their worldview, in a way, paradigms deal with the Weltanschauung, of a person.
I'm excited to read this one, actually. Yes, I agree with all the paradigm stuff you were mentioning there earlier. Yeah.
some interesting things that I saw. This will be kind of like side notes, but Lynn Miles, most people would not know Lynn Miles. He was a very strong rights advocate and that. But I remember at his funeral, Tsai Ing-wen came and visited we had a display of the casket. And I remember Tsai Ing-wen visited that, and I was impressed because at least it said to me that Tsai, was that much aware of Lynn's past in Taiwan. She had good resource people who said we should be there, and she visited that.
That's cool.
That tells me something about a politician.
Agree.
That I'd like to just maybe say a few brief words about the paradigms of the presidents.
Sure. Okay.
Lee Teng-hui, to me, he's Japanese colonial born. Interesting triumvirate there of Feng Mingmen, him and Su Ming. They all born in the same time, all very pro-Taiwanese. Maybe why this one KMT person said they're too much Japanese influence. Ma Ying-jeou totally sold on the Chinese empire. His job, I can remember he worked so hard to get ECFA and all that, and Taiwan's economy, and how the sunflower movement disrupted that. And in a way here, talk about not exactly taking one for the team, but politics. That when the sunflowers took over the Li Fa-yen, Wang Jingping, KMT, was the only one who could get them out. Ma is president, but Wang Jingping is head of the Li Fa-yen. And Ma had tried to shut down Wang's influence the year previous when Wang was in Singapore for his daughter's wedding. And Wang got back at Ma. It was kind of like karma coming back to bite Ma, in the right spot. Because then Wang did not order the police to clear the Li Fa-yen. The sunflower movement exposed a lot about Ma's Chinese empire, unified Taiwan and back to China, etc. And it's interesting how sometimes small things create their own problems.
Of course, yeah.
And then of course Tsai Ing-wen. Tsai Ing-wen has a first female president of Taiwan.
Yep.
Great job. So of the four, each has their own challenge of their period. But I would probably say the most crucial one, that moving Taiwan from the one-party state KMT to its democracy, is Lee Teng-hui.
Okay. Beautiful. That's very cool, man. I appreciate the insights there. And man, I appreciate you coming. When are you leaving? You said you're leaving your flight is very soon. You haven't booked yet, but it's
I haven't
quite
booked
soon.
yet.
So I want to squeeze you in today.
Procrastinators.
Yeah.
My kids are saying, make a decision.
Yeah. Okay.
But it will be probably within a week or so.
Okay. Well,
I know it definitely has to be, because I've got to be back in Texas for some graduation. So.
Okay. Well, I'm very happy to finally have met you. Hopefully, you'll come back for another visit. Back to Taiwan, and when you do, if you do, come back here. If you want to come and visit us, welcome to come back and do another podcast.
Come up and get some. Say Tex-Mex food. I don't know if it's Tex-Mex or just Mexican food.
Yeah, it's okay. We try to do is kind of try to blend, everything, stuff that's familiar. When you do something that's like really, really deep Mexico, nobody knows what it is. So we kind of try to make everything like my mom makes it, but package it to where it's more familiar. So it's somewhere in the middle, I'd say. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, man, I appreciate it. Thank you for coming.
Okay. Well,
thanks so much.
I really enjoyed being out here.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Another time I'll talk about the yellow tiger flag.
Let's do it.
Totally controversial subject.
Let's do that one. Next time you're out, we'll talk about that. Yeah? Beautiful. Thank you guys for watching, and we will see you guys next time. All right. Take care. Bye-bye.
Okay. Hasta la vista.
Hasta la vista, baby.
Thank you everybody for watching Eddie's show. We feel only happiness, don't feel any sorrow. Welcome everybody to watch more on his content. Eddie Live Podcast. Eddie Live Podcast.